I was pulling up. I was in a climbing right-hand turn, about 65 knots. I was about 100 and probably 50, 160 feet off the ground. And just the only way I can explain it was just this huge explosion. I mean, it shook my helmet, it shook our bodies and everything else. And I recall seeing this white hot rod it just went right by my head. And of course, it gets real quiet because they had fired a MANPAD, an SA-16 surface to air shoulder fired missile. And it's an IR and infrared heat seeker, that missile is. So it seeks the heat of the engine. They can use it on jets, fighters, helicopters, whatever that case, but it's designed specifically for that type of engagement. So and of course, when your engine quits, you have all these warning lights and whistles and tones going off in my head. And, in that split second, I told myself, I said, look, I know the engine's out. It's real quiet. And just, I wish that stuff would shut up so I could focus on my task, because I had an enter an auto rotation. I said, okay, I got to get the aircraft level. I got to get the collective down. And at that instant, when that missile hit it, the best way I can explain it is like an old movie frame. So I was seeing my life at that time, frame by frame by frame, and time just slowed down to nothing. Is the best way I can explain that. So, and your training kicks in, we train. That's why we train. But my training kicked in, entered auto rotation, got the collective down, check my altitude, check my airspeed, check my rotor. Because you fly these aircraft long enough, I don't have to look at my rotor RPM. I can hear it. You can hear that up and down, that RPM, the rotation. And I was like, man, it's getting high. So I pulled a little collective in, and we were heavy. I mean, I was full of gas. I was full of ammo. The wind was out of the north, about 20 knots that day. And I had turned to the south because you're going where you are. I mean, you're going down. Again, adrenaline and all these physiological effects take place in your body under stress or under duress. And I understand this. My heart rate was probably about 180 at the time. I'm just going to guess. But so I kept in that dirt. It's not sand, it's just dirt, like you see on TV, and it's extremely dusty. So every landing's a brownout landing, but there's nothing, there's no trees, there's no buildings, there's no poles. So as a helicopter pilot or as an aviator, you use those vertical things to judge your distance above the ground. So around trees, I was like, okay, about the top of those trees, I'll start my decel, because you have a procedure to do during an auto rotation, or you use the radar altimeter. So I kept checking the radar altimeter because there's no way I could judge my height above the ground. So at about 75 feet, my airspeed was good. I was at like 65 knots, and it was a near vertical descent because we were heavy, and I had a tailwind. So I was probably in the worst environment to conduct a successful auto rotation that I could have been in. Because you always want to be into the wind in an aircraft, or especially a helicopter that's heavy, because that wind helps you with lift. So, but it was what it was, and I did what I had to do. So at about 75 feet, I saw on the radar altimeter, I started my decel. So you have to start a deceleration to get that airspeed off. I'm trying to explain best to people that don't fly helicopters. And then at about 20 feet, you'll pull initial with the collective. And that's just to start your cushion as you're coming down rapidly. I was probably descending at about 2,600 feet per minute. So that helicopter screams out of the air during an auto rotation. because of the rotor system. I said, okay, at about 20, 25 feet, I'm going to initial and I'm going to level because I'm in a decelerating attitude like this. And you don't want to touch down like that because you'll knock the tail boom off. So about 20 feet, you level, and then you pull your cushion just as you're, 10 to 5 feet before touching down. So I pulled just a little bit of initial after I leveled. And for me, I did not know the condition of the surface. So I wanted to reduce, I didn't want a very long ground run, is what I'm trying to say. So I did a really steep, decel to get that airspeed off. Then I leveled, and then I just pulled everything I had left at about 10 to 15 feet. And then I touched down, and it was perfect. It was like, it's kind of like Neil Armstrong, getting Lim to the moon. He had one shot. Well, Gravy had one shot, and I did it. And the guy I was flying with, later we were in our heads, we were high-fiving each other. It's like, man. And then the guy in the other aircraft said, dude, that was the prettiest auto I've ever seen in my life. And I was on fire. I mean, I actually have a picture that one of the Rangers took, and you can see the fire coming out of my aircraft and smoke, and it had blown the engine doors. They were flapping in the wind. The ground guys were like, it was in that combat pause, that second, they were like, it's kind of funny, look at old Gravy up there trying to fly. The engine cowling doors are flapping. I'm on fire. But so I landed, of course, just you're engulfed in that dust cloud because it's real fine like powder, and the cockpit filled with dust. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, just hold everything, because I knew I wasn't going very fast when I touched down. And we were level and we were upright. And I said, hey, we got this. And then Mr. Murphy sticks his old ugly head up. Everybody knows who Murphy is, right? The bad luck guy. So I said, okay, I'm going to hold everything right here. We'll come to a stop. I started to slowly lower that collective to get that rotor blade flat and get that weight on the ground. And we slid about 35 yards. And I went down just a bit of a slope, and then there was some soft dirt there. Well, the skids hit that soft dirt with that momentum and that weight. Well, they stuck. So end over end we go. And I'm an old cowboy, and I used to, break horses and ride horses and stuff. But all I could think of, when a horse would start bucking, you get your feet out in front of you and you kind of lean back, to get that center of gravity back. You don't get bucked off. Well, that's what I did in that helicopter, because that helicopter started doing this. So I was like back. And then I don't remember I remember hearing the rotor blades hit, that pow, 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 pow. And I do remember going over that first time. They said we rolled 3 times.